Hello, welcome to Caldwell County Today. I'm Paige Counts, Public Information Officer for Caldwell County. Joining me today is Jason Pennell, Communications Director for Caldwell County. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Paige.
We are coming up in April is Telecommunications Week.
Correct.
And we wanted to take a few minutes to look at what your department does.
Okay.
But first, I'm going to ask you, just tell us a little about yourself.
So my name's Jason Pennell. I've been with the county since 1999. I started working in communications under then Director Carla Bates and the Sheriff Roger Hutchings. Was hired December 20th of 1999 as a telecommunicator, worked my way up from a telecommunicator to shift supervisor. I did leave for just a short period to go to Catawba County 911, and that was about 18 months, and then came back and then was promoted to Communications Director July of 2019.
So during that time, how have communications changed?
So when I first started, we had, so you work 2 day shifts and 2 night shifts. Each day shift had 2 people on it, and then there was a peak person that worked each rotation. And they worked the hours typically during the week, Monday through Thursday, 12 to 12, 12 noon to 12 midnight. And Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you worked from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m.
So now what does it look like?
So now we have 4 people each shift. Each day shift has 4 full-time telecommunicators, and we have 1 peak person that works each rotation. So the day shift runs from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., night shift runs from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and the peak position works 12 noon to midnight.
And I'm guessing by the increase in staffing, you've seen an increase in calls.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
So what's your call volume look like?
So I can tell you from the physical year of 2020, we answered 34,909 911 calls and 122,864 administrative calls. And
what are some of those calls? What kind of calls do you get in the 911 center?
So we get anything from structure fires, car accidents, domestics, fights, civil disturbance, and that could be neighbors just having an argument over property line, to true medical calls, fire calls. On top of that, we'll get, believe it or not, we'll get calls for road conditions. Is school in or out? Is courthouse open? People will call 911 for that. Power outages, water main breaks, trees in the roadway. So we take a little bit of everything.
What should people call 911 for, and what shouldn't people call 911 for?
So you want to call 911 for true medical, law enforcement, and fire emergencies. You know, if your house is on fire, your car's on fire, somebody that's not conscious, not breathing, people that are in domestics, fights, call 911 for that. You don't want to call 911 for power outages, water main breaks, a tree in the roadway, road conditions, you know, is school open or closed, courthouse. Some will call to talk to detectives and officers, and that's not the appropriate line to call.
Because there are other lines. Power companies have a line to report outages.
Yes, ma'am.
There's an administrative line for the Sheriff's Department.
That's correct.
Those are all other numbers. We don't want to tie up 911.
Correct, and they can call the main number for the Sheriff's Office, 828-758-2324.
Right.
To talk to anybody within the Sheriff's Office.
And when someone has that true emergency and they call 911, your dispatchers or telecommunicators, I guess is the proper term now, they're trained in a variety of calls.
That is correct. So if they call for a medical emergency, we do what they call emergency medical dispatch. It is a national and state certification, and they're going to ask you typically 8 to 10 questions once the phone call's made. And we've added 3 extra questions due to the COVID pandemic. We have to ask those questions also, but they can give instructions, anything from hemorrhage control to CPR, delivering a baby. We can do all of that over the phone.
Just what kind of training does your staff go through?
So when you're hired, you have to go to telecommunicator school through sheriff standards. Now, some people ask why when you don't work for the sheriff. Well, legislation just passed it where everybody has to be certified through the North Carolina Justice Standard training standards July the 1st of 2021. Now, we've been certified ever since we were under the sheriff. So you go to telecommunicator school, it's 44 hours. Typically runs Sunday afternoon to Friday. The Caldwell Community College is offering a class now, and they break it up. It's like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you're off Saturday, Sunday, and come back and finish Monday, Tuesday, and maybe Wednesday. It's brand new, so I'm still trying to learn their schedule. So you have to do that 44 hours. You have to attend DCI school, and that's the Division of Criminal Information. You can run car tags, wanted persons, driver's license numbers, stolen guns, things of that nature. And that's typically a 3 to 4 day class. You can do that, or have to do that. And then the emergency medical dispatch, it's if I'm not mistaken, it's a 24-hour class that you have to attend.
It's not attend these classes and you're done.
That's correct.
You continue training.
That's correct.
Often.
So DCI, you're required to recertify every 2 years. EMD every 2 years. So you've got 18 hours of telecommunicator school every year that you have to have in service on. EMD, you have to have 24 hours every 2 years. And then of course CPR, I left that out, but you do have to be CPR certified to give the CPR instructions. They require us to be CPR certified for that also.
And because we have worked closely together over the last year due to COVID and emergency operations, one of the things I learned is you have an in-depth knowledge of our county. We could ask Jason, we could be like, is this road and this address in Caldwell County? And he knew off the top of his head. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing that's 20 years of experience.
Yep, it is. You just learn the streets. You learn some streets, I could tell you the block ranges, others not as good, but yeah, you learn a lot about the county.
Because
in that length of time.
You were just automatic, where I'm trying to look up on GIS, but you knew. Mm-hmm. And it's literally just sitting there looking at that map.
That's
what
true.
kind of technology does your staff have? I mean, what kind of things what tools do they use?
So obviously we have the telephone. It's all computer based now. Everything we have is computer based. So we've got CAD, is computer aided dispatch. On that, it shows us everybody available in the county law enforcement. Now we dispatch for Caldwell County Sheriff's Office, Hudson Police Department, a little bit for Granite Falls Police, Road Hills Police Department. We have 16 fire departments, which counts the City of Lenoir Fire Department. And then you've got typically 8 EMS crews and 1 to 2 supervisors during the day shift. So it's a lot to keep up with.
And you have, do you see maps when you're pulling this stuff up?
So on the CAD, we do have maps. Some people have their console set up a little different. When I do work the radio or the console, I use the biggest screen we have just for mapping. And in downtime, I would study the map, and especially the southern end. I grew up in the Gamble area, so the northern end of the county I was fairly familiar with. The southern end, I could get around with major streets and some secondaries. But there was a lot I didn't know. Draco, Dudley, I wasn't real familiar, so I would, and Sawmill was actually, 321A, 321 I knew, but some of the back roads I did not know. So I would just sit and study the map during a 12-hour shift.
You know the maps quite well. And another thing I also noticed, because I heard of most of the calls, is you give people a cross street. When you give an address, you give a cross street, so a point of reference to help people find it. So you really are their guide.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Through everything.
Yeah, and that's one thing we try to do. Any call we give out, on our CAD, it gives us 2 cross streets. So we always try to give those 2 cross streets. Because if it's a big road, and I'll use Blowing Rock Boulevard, you know, it runs from Smith Crossroads to Watauga County. So if you give them an address and don't give them a cross street, and if they're not familiar with the block ranges, they may not have any idea where they're going, which way they need to go.
Right.
So giving them those 2 cross streets will help narrow it down to where what area they need to be in to be looking for the call. I'm just going to throw this out there.
Do you see more medical calls or emergency, police calls?
Law enforcement calls, definitely.
Okay.
Because I've done a 5-year average, and you're looking roughly 40,000 calls. That's just for the sheriff's office. That doesn't count Hudson or Granite or Road Hills. So they definitely lead the calls for us. around 40,000 a year.
And the city of Lenoir, you don't dispatch for their police department.
That's correct. They have their own communication center that deals with the police department.
And when someone calls 911, how does that work so that the call is routed to the right place?
So because we do the emergency medical dispatch, all calls in Caldwell County come to us first, no matter where they're at. So if they call in and it's a larceny that happened at Walmart, as long as nobody was injured during this larceny, then we'll switch it to the police department so they can get the law enforcement side of it and get an officer on the way to take care of that.
How has COVID changed what you do over the last year?
It's been a challenge for sure, because it's impacted the way our response is for medical calls. You know, they're for 8 or 9 months, maybe just a little longer. There were certain calls that fire departments were going on that they're not going on. Mm-hmm. You know, so it started out just what we call echo responses, which is cardiac arrest, respiratory arrest. So we weren't sending. If it wasn't that, we were not sending first responders at all. So that was something we had to adjust to, because we were so used to sending them to these type of calls, and then that was cut out for several months, which it started back normal in January of 2021. So you had those you had to worry about, making sure you didn't send them to these type of calls. And then having to ask the COVID questions on top of that was something that we had to adjust to, because we weren't used to doing that. I'm sure there were several that were missed at the beginning. We didn't answer or didn't ask those questions, but we knew there was going to be a small hiccup until we could get accustomed to it, which we done very well, I believe. So that was the biggest challenge and change during the COVID, was making sure we sent the right people to the right calls and making sure we was asking those COVID questions to protect our responders that were going. And now we don't only ask those questions for medical. We ask them for every call comes in, whether they need law enforcement or if it's just a fire call, we still ask those questions.
And that's in an effort to protect the first responders.
That's correct. Yep.
Jason, what would you like for the community to know about communications in Caldwell County? Is there any misconceptions that you would like to clarify, or anything? I mean, I think the training your staff goes through is incredible. Mm-hmm. And also, if I'm correct, and you may correct me on this, you've got longevity. Once people start, you generally your people stay in place for a while.
That's correct. Turnover for us is not high at all. Like I said, I'll be in this position 2 years in July, and I've lost one full-time person in almost 2 years. And she left for a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with more pay.
Right, and for people who work shift, who work nights, a lot of times you do see turnover.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So I think that speaks volumes about the environment and the people you have.
Yep. And just to give the public an idea, you know, like I mentioned, we work 6A to 6P, but you get every other weekend off. And the way the schedule works, if you start your long week on Monday, you'll work Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The next week's opposite. You're off Monday, Tuesday, you work Wednesday, Thursday, off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you average about 15 days a month with every other weekend off.
So
the only downfall, you do have to work holidays on top of that, Christmas, Thanksgiving.
But you are there and you are answering the phone.
Correct.
You are answering the calls.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything I've forgotten to ask?
I don't think so.
And I see something we probably need to clarify.
Okay.
Who do you work for? We know you work for Caldwell County, but in the structure of the county.
So we work for Caldwell County Emergency Services.
Right.
So we've seen a change. We started out under the sheriff. We were under the sheriff when I started in '99. In around 2015, we were moved to the Information Technology Department. And then the fourth quarter of, we were changed in 2011 to Information Technology. And then the fourth quarter of 2015, we were moved again to Emergency Services. And that's who we fall under now.
But most of your telecommunicators do physically work from the Sheriff's Department.
That's correct. Our 911 center is still located inside the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office.
Right. So, so that is a little bit confusing, but you actually, as far as a command structure, report to emergency services.
That's correct. I report to Dino DiBernardi,
So,
who's the emergency services director.
and just because, again, Jason and I have worked closely over the last year, he splits his time between the Health and Human Service building and the Sheriff's Department, and seems to do that very well, actually, going back and forth. So, Jason, anything else? Anything you will say about your staff, your team, as we're approaching Telecommunicators Week?
I would just like to thank them for the job they've done. Not just every day, but especially through this last year, because it's been a big change for them. And it seemed like there for the first 3 or 4 months of COVID, our policy for medical was changing weekly, because North Carolina OEMS was changing policies. We answer to Dr. Diane McClinton. She's the county medical director. So, North Carolina OEMS makes a change, then we have to contact Dr. McClinton to tell her this change and see if she wants to, go with it or not. And obviously we went with it. So, yeah, it's been a challenge for them, and I'm very proud of what they've done over this last year. They've done a tremendous job.
And it's comforting to know as a citizen that when we call 911, there's somebody trained on the other answering that call who
Correct.
can help us to whatever our emergency is.
Correct.
But again, we want to make sure that we're saving that 911 call for true emergencies, not power outages,
Correct.
talk to a detective, things like that.
That's it. That's correct. Yep.
Jason, thank you for joining us. And again, I want you to pass along to your staff a huge thank you for what they do.
Well, thank you very much.
Because they are one of our front lines, and sometimes they're forgotten.
True. They are.
But thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching Caldwell County Today.